It was heaven, and a fairy gazed into the fountain, thinking about a future in which a car had crashed. Many attendants were there, but seeing the urgency, she decided to step in to help. Koji was at his corporate office. He listened to his boss, who had given him a task to fix it by that day. His shift was almost over, just around the corner, but with the soft words that the manager said he thought his shift was starting, and when Koji checked, he saw the work had arrived 3 days earlier. Being assigned so late without any prior notice upset the boss, who started screaming. He looked at him and asked if she was ready to do it, left with only a simple answer and no other choice, code. He decided to do it and was introduced as Koji Maido, who had been working at a black company for 13 days. After long struggles and hard work, he finally returned home trembling on his feet. His boss always made him stay at work until the last minute, and tomorrow was a day off. As he reached out, something unexpected caught his attention. He found something in his mailbox, and when he opened it, he saw a packet labeled Seed of God, a sample of a nutritional supplement. He decided to try it because he found it exciting. He looked at the mysterious seed and wondered if he should play along with that strange prank. The next morning, he decided to take the first step. Get soil from the nearby park and fill a glass halfway. Next, use your index finger to make a hole to the second joint. He took some seeds from the packet, placed them in the soil, watered it until it was damp, and looked happy after finishing those small chores. Before he could even blink, veins burst out of it and grew quickly. Something appeared in a fruit that had a little girl inside. He called it the fruit goddess, and the moment he touched it, the fruit broke and the goddess fell to the floor. An awkward moment passed between them because no one knew what was really happening. The goddess, however, recognized the man and made no further fuss. Nari introduced herself as the goddess of cultivation, and after the formal exchange, she explained she had come to save his life. Koji was speechless and could not understand. She said that after working so hard, he always fell asleep when resting because he never relaxed properly. She'd seen him drive dramatically into a convenience store, so she went to rescue him. For Koji, that made perfect sense, and he realized that by salvation, she meant his current job where he had many responsibilities. Someone suggested cutting ties with them, but it was not carried out, so Nari took matters into her own hands. She promised to make him happy with things that would not matter. She pulled something from the middle of her balloons and handed it over, saying it was the seed of utopia that would create an ideal world for him. First, they had to go collect the materials needed for the preparation. They drove to the supermarket, and Nari was simply amused. Lurking outside the baggage was dangerous, so Koji told her not to act out because of the requirements for growing vegetables. Needing a mat to spread it, they looked for magnesium olivine. Koji knew they could not buy a gemstone at a home center. The goddess saw something, pointed to it, and told him to get a marble name plate as a suitable substitute for the requirement. Koji was stunned that she made no effort to avoid being noticed. Once the shopping was done and he had paid, Koji realized the materials were expensive, costing him about 7,000 yen. Once they had everything, they decided to head home while Nari ate some chocolates they had not planned to buy. She now gave him instructions on how to proceed with the first step. He had to spread 2.5 bags of soil evenly across the area, placing it over the marble. While working, his boss called and needed him there immediately. Out of options, he had to go to work despite having worked the past 2 weeks, so he hurried off, apologizing to the girl and promising to be back by evening. Nora only asked him to be careful. When he left, she took matters into her own hands and planted the utopia before he arrived. She seemed to be waiting for something, and minutes later it happened, bringing a bright smile to her face. After 10 more hours of work, Koji returned completely exhausted. Opening the gate and hearing it ring, he found Nari resting and drooling. Koji wasn't worried because he hadn't told her when he'd be back. Unhappy, Nari wanted to give the boy a proper greeting when he returned, so they decided to act it out again. Complying with the order, he opened the gate and was greeted by the lady. It was far better than expected. The welcome was full of cheers and her face glittered. After changing into his usual clothes, he found the task still undone. Even more shocking, when he reached the spot where he had laid the soil, he found that something had already been created inside the dome. You could see rivers, buildings, and a different world. She had made it herself, brimming with magical cultivation and designed to fulfill his desires. She was proud to have fulfilled Koji's request and believed it could be revised if he asked, but Koji could not express his gratitude with words alone, so she stopped him from saying more. The lady gently tapped him on the forehead. She clarified that she wanted him to speak directly from his heart. She added that as a goddess, she could easily read her subordinate's heart, but had no intention of revealing what she actually saw. She remembered Koji had just come back from a 10-hour shift and must be tired, but he was eager to learn about the exciting world he would soon rule and asked her to start right away. Following the command, Nari began the task by performing a strange dance. It looked like she was summoning wind magic with a steady chant. Gathering everyone in one place, she told them that the magic was moderate and finally voiced her inner wish to go to the utopia with Koji. A sudden bright light appeared and startled him. The next moment he opened his eyes to find Nari already much larger. When he looked at her, unable to grasp the reason, he listened as she explained that in that world she would be the same size as him, and her words were extravagant. Looking around, Koji realized he was not at his plate. The place was the utopia she had created just for him. The atmosphere there was pretty amusing too. He thought the place was amazing, but one thing was wrong. The place was completely empty and no one was there, so it must have been an abandoned town. Oddly, when she created the utopia, she deliberately included many people. Midway through their discussion, something else caught their attention. When they looked up, they saw something flying overhead. It was identified as a large whale, and at first Koji praised the girl for creating something he had never seen before, but the woman who insisted it was not part of the plan suddenly changed her expression. Before she could finish the sentence, events took another turn. A whale suddenly pulled Koji out of nowhere. The woman tried to protect him and held his hand, but the pull was too strong. They didn't want to give up each other's hens, but it happened. The man was sucked in by that mysterious whale, something he had never planned. The world felt all wrong. The lady kept screaming for Koji but could do nothing as. After smalling him, the whale swam away using its tail. A drop of water hit Koji inside the monster's stomach and woke him up. He thought of Nari and then realized there was nothing ahead but a cave-like structure. As he tried to understand, it dawned on him that he had already been swallowed by the whale and was inside its stomach. There was no good alternative, and that was not the worst part because something else awaited him. Turning around, he thought he could ask Nari to get him out of it. Small monsters stared at him, intent on killing him. Again, he had no choice but to run from them to save his life. Monsters multiplied rapidly, so he ran as far as he could, searching for a solution and remembering Nari's words about magic. Unable to keep running forever, he decided to give magic a try and immediately held out his palm. He called on the world of magic and formed a ball before him that even shook his composure. Before he could fully comprehend it, he realized the light had no effect. The creatures were completely unharmed, and Koji was not ready for that kind of magic. However, the light caused the monsters to back off for the moment. Koji didn't want to know how it worked because simply being saved was enough to protect him from harm. The next second he couldn't stand and thought it might be fatigue, that he'd lost his strength at the wrong time. After he fell to the floor, someone nearby was concerned about his condition. A whale flew over the abandoned city. Nari lay on the floor, unable to see how she could save the person she was bound to, and she calmed down a little. Suspecting the whale might be a malfunction in Utopia, she grew more troubled and ran after it. That offered no help because the whale was too high for her or her powers to reach, so she could only pray for her man's good health. Koji regained consciousness after a while. This time he saw not just a hole, but something that had hit it. A woman watched him, worried about his health. Startled again, the man stepped back, and she assured him the place was safe. Regaining his composure, he decided to listen, and the woman introduced herself as Karna, saying she had taken him to a safe place while he was unconscious. Koji introduced himself and apologized for misjudging her. Turning around, he saw not one but many mermaids behind him, but one thing was odd. None of them clearly noticed him. They realized each of them lacked a sense because none could see him at all. Koji asked for clarification and the woman said they were the ones swallowed by the whale called the greed terrace. Being freshly swallowed by the whale let him see, but his magical energy was already being slowly drained to keep the whale alive. Oji felt the same and realized he would lose his sight in just a few days and become invisible, and he could not understand how she could see when no one else could. Karno explained Koji's light. She called it a miraculous thing because it had restored her eyesight when she asked him for something. Using that light, he restored the sight of every mermaid present. The light could gently heal wounds and illness and remove evil, but their situation remained just as dangerous. She remembered Nari saying this was not her doing, just a later turn of events. While he was still working on a solution, grateful, Karnakin flicked her mermaid tail to thank him, and it meant a lot to him, but they still had to find a way out. Trying to make sense of it, Koji found that deeper in the whale's stomach there were two areas, one crawling with bugs and the other full of hydrochloric acid that would consume him, and he was still searching for a way to escape. Out of nowhere, he recalled an Anheim where Koji escaped a whale by lighting a campfire. It was the only thing they could do at the moment. Once they told Karna the plan, they could smoke out the Greek terrace from the inside and get rid of it. Needing fire and a way to light it, Koji took out a smartphone and 5 sticks of mint gum. He told her he knew how to make it work. Koji removed the phone battery and thinned the gum foil. About to spark it, he needed something to burn, so he used his cloths, and the small spark produced smoke inside. His intelligence amazed every mermaid present, and he told everyone to collect anything nearby that could be used for the fire. With plenty of material, the fire grew intense, and he knew it was working because the inside burned painfully. The plan succeeded, and the Greed terrace began to descend from midair. Koji felt relieved that if they fell from that height, they would surely be able to get out of its mouth. There was a sea around, so they needed to. They feared that if the whale fell there, they would drown. However, this did not happen to their hens, so they left it alone, from the outside. Nori watched the whale fall and saw thick smoke. The process gave her a synchronized memory, and she realized the enemy was recreating Koji's idea. Seizing the opportunity, she acted immediately. On top of a building, she began praying, calling on the trees and other magical forces. Light converged on her, giving her the strength she needed. As she prayed more, her appearance gradually became covered in wood. Before she knew it, her body was covered in leaves, as if they were all obeying the goddess, Once she had a full shield, she summoned an object from the trunk that had risen from the ground, aiming it straight at the whale. The attack was so intense that repeated strikes made the monster bleed at its belt. The whale appeared to be suffering and even opened its mouth, and the lady was glad the strike had succeeded, even though she began to tremble from the sheer power required to control it. Since it was his only chance, she asked Koji to leave. At that moment, all the mermaids, including Koji, grabbed something to keep from falling into the belly. The impact from below made him realize the shock came from outside and that the Greed terrace was rampaging. Their grip on the rock was slipping because, if it kept going, they would fall into the stomach uncontrollably. Grant had just found a way out of the bodhi and began moving toward them. They appeared to be trying to cover it, and soon a wooden barricade went up, leaving neither the mermaids nor Koji able to understand what had happened. A second later, something rose from the center, revealing that Nari had found a way to come up through the wooden veins. The instant they interacted, an awkward silence fell, then a sudden scream, and after a moment they recognized each other. Relief washed over Nari when she realized Koji was not her, and she asked him to wait a moment so they could go down and save everyone. Koji felt relieved that Karna and the other mermaids were safe. Norris's condition was different. Although she tried to appear strong, she could not keep it up. The branches began to break apart, and she was about to fall. With all her strength gone, she lost consciousness. Koji found the right moment and immediately moved in to catch her in mid-air, confused because her hands and feet were completely gone. She said she had absorbed life to enter the land and help them right then. The biggest concern was the branch holding the flying whale was collapsing. Koji knew they had to get out now to avoid the collapse's impact. Something else awaited them when the monsters from earlier returned to attack him. He tried to save the woman while using his leg to keep them at bay because they had to act right away. He realized Nari was coming back to her senses and was asking him to hold her a little while longer. Suddenly she found new strength and stood to protect. Using her branches to attack them, she moved as if she had never been unconscious. Her attack was strong enough to take them all down at once. Koji was confused by the sudden change because just minutes earlier she had been in his hands asking for support. He was more concerned about her limbs, which were not present at the moment. On his request, she instantly returned to her previous form with all her limbs back in place and the branches completely gone. Koji couldn't tell if it was a transformation or a regeneration, and Nari, blushing slightly, said it was like a monster's power. She actually had those abilities. Koji was surprised, but happy that the goddess finally came to his rescue. During their discussion, a mermaid appeared out of nowhere. Interrupting them, she said she heard a noise coming from nowhere. That was odd. The next second, the tree the whale was holding onto snapped, and they all began to fall. Nari had to gather her strength again to save everyone. She seemed to be moving toward Koji for a hug. The moment their bodies collided, she used her wood power to catch everyone and immediately stopped them from falling. She spun a web like a spider to hold everyone together as the whale fell to the ground. Koji opened his eyes and was surprised to see she had saved everyone. The woman was relieved it had worked the way she wanted, but the goddess had to make one final move to open a way for their escape. She fashioned a drill from her hands and drove it into a corner of the whale, making an opening and earning thanks from everyone there. As soon as they stepped outside, they saw the spectacular utopia she had created for him. They were about to enjoy the life he wanted when the woman suddenly grew exhausted and nearly fainted. Koji wanted to do something to help her out of that suffering, and Nari's face lit with delight at those words. She asked him right away to hold her properly for once. Although they were already out of the mess, Koji found the request very odd and could not understand it, so she explained that by clinging she could replenish her divine power. Koji had never talked to a woman in his life, so he felt awkward staring at her balloons since there were so many. Meanwhile, the mermaids behind him acted like cheerleaders, constantly urging him to do whatever was asked without question, and the atmosphere was intense. Because the request came from a beautiful woman who let him touch her, it felt like a small extra favor for what she had done for him. Those words made it even more awkward for him to act on. After all that, in the end, he gently approached her to give her a hug around her chest. People saw it as the first step toward migrating to utopia. Mermaids in the background were delighted to see the sight. The mood grew more intense, and the mermaid seemed full of that feeling, so she asked both of them to move closer. She gripped the boy's hands and, in a seductive voice, asked whether his heart belonged to her. Suddenly, Koji was wrapped in a light he could not understand. Nari said the light showed they were back in the original world. As they were leaving, Koji waved to the mermaids, hoping to meet them next time. One mermaid refused to let them go, so she reached her hands into the light. The suit and both of them were transported to the original world when, opening his eyes, Koji felt slightly heavier. He looked around and realized he had finally returned to his own world, but something was wrong, and the goddess was screaming while her expression showed the plan had failed. When Koji looked, he realized he had brought the mermaid from the utopia into his old world. Karna was surprised to be part of it, and after some time, they finally realized the utopia they had created was flawed, shown by the greed terrace and Karna coming to the world from paradise. Trying to remember, the goddess said she had accidentally used marble instead of a proper base, but that should not be a big problem, in simple words. The cause was unknown, and the goddess had no idea, so she simply pouted. Planning to create everything from scratch, she surprised the mermaid with those words. Worried about the fate of the world where her people survived, she heard the goddess say a catastrophe would turn it into a lifeless mass of flame and remake everything, and when she pictured it, she realized it would not be a good idea. Koji knew they couldn't be so callous as to destroy a world and tell one of its survivors it would happen. He chose to find another way. The goddess knew that once a utopia was finished, it could not be changed from the outside, only discarded, so they had to repair every part that caused problems. It came as a sudden shock to Koji, who had never been ready for it. Confident from handling similar corporate cases many times and a proven expert, he immediately declared they would not build the utopia from scratch, but would remove the alleged bug and then restore it. The decision brought joyful tears to the goddess's eyes, and she wiped them away, accepting the offer immediately with optimism. Unable to follow their conversation, the mermaid asked him for help and Koji agreed. They said they would not abandon her world over a few problems, because that would be too harsh. The goddess also believed it and told the lady not to worry. Assured they'd handle it, she had an idea and told them Koji would be sent directly to the world if he fell asleep while resting, though the system was strange. About to explain how it really worked, the goddess's stomach growled from hunger. She felt embarrassed because she'd already eaten a lot earlier but was still hungry. She clarified that using a lot of power required fuel, and Koji was not very tired at the moment. He decided to finish the transfer setup tonight because they had the next day off to shop for what was needed. He invited the mermaid, not because he wanted to, but because her eyes kept asking for it. She was mainly worried about her lower half, which was shaped like a fish, but he decided to deal with it calmly. The next day, they all rode in Koji's vehicle, and the mermaid got excited as she watched the scenery go by. Dressed in a Star Wars skirt and wrapped in sheets to hide her lower half, she was disguised. They were even enjoying music in the vehicle. The goddess kept dancing and began talking about what other kinds of monsters might exist in the world, apart from the one they had faced. The mermaid remembered that others always came to trade goods after a certain day, but none arrived. Shaken to his core, the man even jumped at a red light and asked whether different races really existed in the world. She confirmed there were cat people, dog people, winged people, fairies, and several beasts. While driving, a goddess sat on his head, In his mind, he pictured everyone as girls. Right now, they were worried about the elves who had stopped coming, and the mermaids could not climb the mountains by themselves to check. Koji felt something was happening there, so he made checking it their next plan because of the bug. The goddess smiled and agreed to stay until the restoration was complete. They had formed a plan. They needed to get fired up and gather the materials. When they reached the mall, Koji borrowed a wheelchair to transport the mermaid, and the three of them enjoyed their visit, sampling several cuisines and doing some shopping. They even went to a movie theater, and later he took the mermaid shopping, where the dress she bought looked extraordinary. That evening they returned home carrying a lot of food, and Koji was going to make bacon for dinner, while the others helped in their own way. Everyone else was absorbed in their work, while the goddess was drawn to the items she had bought from each of them for her own purposes. She urged them to finish the task quickly because they would return to the utopia after they rested. She explained that the moment Koji went to rest, his entire body would be automatically transported there. It was likely the spot they returned to on the last visit, but she wasn't sure because several bugs were present. Given the uncertainty, Koji cooked the bacon and served it to both of them, eager to explore the next village with them. In the utopia on the far side of the mountain, an elf was being buried and very young, received a final, tearful farewell from many people. After burying her while crying, they returned to their village at once, unaware that something unprecedented was happening there. Someone stood a short distance from the village, watching the yawning guards as they carried out their duties. They froze when they recognized a girl coming from there, could not believe their eyes, and were completely shocked. One guard carefully asked for details, while the other focused on cleaning the dirt and the wound. As he reached into his pocket, Liddy suddenly changed, and everything went black for a while. When the scene returned, the girl stood in the center of the village, while everyone else was eating each other like zombies. The girl didn't even realize what she'd done and was crying. Once they'd eaten their bacon and returned to the utopia, they became more concerned about the damage the giant whale had caused because it was dangerous. Nari took on all the responsibility herself, but the mermaid refused, knowing Nari had saved everyone's lives. The world chose to begin with recovery as the first step. After they finished eating, they spread out the futon because it was time to rest in the next. In the scene where they fell asleep, they returned to the utopia, and this time Koji was. He is on the floor with two women above him, both quietly lying there and unpacking a little. Koji surveyed the site where the whale fell. They had to find somewhere to move the boat before it decayed. An ongoing issue required attention, so they had to care for the village, fix the location problem, and set priorities. Koji asked how far the village was, and was told it would take about half a day. After weighing both options, Koji chose to go to the village first and then return to handle the other issue. Karna waited for him and wished them luck as they left with their packed bags. Venturing into the mountains, they walked without stopping as the goddess Nari guided them, clearly excited. Singing the song, she shared its background, explaining it was a children's tune from the heavens. It was often sung on hikes and frequently performed during lectures at hiking schools. After walking for a while, they reached the far edge of the forest. Nari pointed at someone and said she had seen an elf who might be looking for something. After suggesting they investigate, Koji stepped forward and asked about the village. The elf did not move. Koji assumed the elf had not heard him. Koji tried to signal, but his expression changed when the elf turned and revealed mushrooms covering her rear. She seemed infected. This was not the end. Her body was covered with mushrooms from head to mouth. Before they could understand its meaning, the elf attacked without warning. Forced to run, they fled as fast as they could, both searching for answers about what had happened. Koji struggled to run, weighed down by bags full of all kinds of food. He kept urging Nari to use magic to find a way out because they needed a miracle from the gods. Ready to do anything to escape, he did not seize the chance. Turning to face the mushroom-covered elf, she raised her guard, wound up a punch, and as the elf lunged to attack her, Nari released a wooden rope that snared the elf and held it fast, declaring it was 10 years too early to beat her in a forest battle. They tied her with 2 or 3 ropes and tried to figure out what it was. Her body structure made it clear she was an elf. The signs suggested she was parasitized by a mushroom, like in horror movies where something enters a body and takes control. Nari knew this because she would sneak peeks at the movie nights through the heavens, which felt a bit illegal since she had no tickets. Koji worried more about the village, fearing that if this were true, everyone there might have met the same fate. The movie's twists showed they were about to be attacked by an entire horde of infected, which was completely unprecedented. Nari spotted something and asked him to be quiet. moved forward with skill and care, and Nari suddenly used her magic to seize two more people. She warned the group that trees and enemies could be hiding at any point or in any corner, so they needed to be cautious. The one she caught turned out to be one of the infected elves, with no mushrooms growing on them. After they clarified things and checked, the four sat down to talk, but the couple looked like they'd been hungry for a long time and kept eating as much as they could. Tears of happiness ran down their faces as they ate and smiled. Partway through, Koji asked whether the elves were being taken over by mushrooms because they had no control of their bodies. The Malal confirmed it was an infection, since that happened while they were hunting in the forest and he found someone who had passed out. Mushrooms covered everything. When a companion tried to help, they suddenly started coughing, and each cough sent out mushrooms. The reaction spread suddenly, and when the companion attacked another person the next second, they realized their only chance was to run back to the village to warn everyone. Koji realized the infection and symptoms showed up after contact, and it felt like a zombie movie. At that moment, he remembered the goddess had fought the monster directly without taking proper precautions. He looked to her for confirmation. Although she ended up looking rather dazed, she was completely fine. Her immunity to the infection came from being a plant-type goddess. Goddesses were poisonous, so those germs did not affect her at all. She said with obvious pride that her body could neutralize anything in a few seconds, and that she was practically invincible, and right now they even had a plan if a horde of infected tried to attack. They tied them up with the rope and planned to look for a cure, and Koji remembered he had a magic light that had healed the mermaid's sight in the whale, and when he took it out, Nari also recognized it as a miraculous light that could heal anything. Koji moved toward the infected person, but the other elf, who was healthy, immediately told him to step back. The man was tied up and suffering from the light. He explained that the infected react strongly to it, becoming ferocious and Koji because of it. They understood they could not just sit and wait for the matter to resolve. When the goddess noticed he was very stressed, she told him she could handle it herself. There was nothing to worry about, so she asked him to return to the port with the elf while she handled everything else, but Koji showed no interest and refused. He said a short rest would get him back on his feet, and as a man he could not leave a girl alone, so he asked to do it together. Saying it that way felt almost miraculous, and it opened the woman's eyes. She was delighted that he was coming with her. Still excited, she asked something she thought a kind boy might not understand, because guys are more sensitive about their virginity. Koji couldn't understand what it meant, and the situation kept getting worse, but he decided not to give up. They said it was completely fine for them to be part of it because they had not caused any problems, and although Koji was suffering greatly, he chose to say nothing, so the two of them continued toward the village, following the couple at a distance. After traveling non-stop for a while, they somehow finally reached the elf village. It was far more soothing than they had expected. On inspecting one of the bodies, they found it in the same condition as the one they had seen in the forest. It became clear the village was full of them, the same seen on every corner, showing there was no way to survive if you appeared out of nowhere. They heard a whistling sound from one corner and moved toward it. Hoping they could save someone, they used wooden blocks to cross a small stream and approached the gate of the house where the voice came from. Reaching the house's lawn, they found a beautiful young girl continuously mumbling in a soothing voice. When they both noticed, they realized she was the village's only survivor. Both of them approached her posing as rescue workers and asked if there were any other survivors, but the girl, who stayed there alone for many more days, found no one. Despite being there for days, no one attacked her, and the woman was confused because whenever they tried, they just walked past her. They looked at each other and tried to understand what it meant. It was then concluded that, like in the movies, she might be the immune girl. She was. They could not understand those words, but the goddess said that with her cooperation, they could make the medicine immediately. They planned to take some of her blood and alter it in her body to create and grow the seeds, and if everyone had that seed's fruit, it would be disinfected too. That process would take a long time. As the forest goddess, Nari could grow enough in a day. Jokingly, Nari said every zombie movie should include one like her to deal with them. Since it was already evening, they decided to head back to the port first. The little girl sitting there felt uneasy in her body, tears about to fall, and her fist clenched tightly. As soon as Koji noticed, he went up to her and said he would find a solution for everything. His soothing words made her believe they could move to a safer place and find a solution. The girl was pleased by the words but couldn't speak, and she only made clear that they meant nothing. When they reached the middle of the forest, Nari was once again in front. Protecting everyone in the village, she binds them into her spell and carries them all out. In an instant, she felt like a pure god, fully in control of herself. By then her words had grown tenfold, saying no one could beat her in the forest and that they were 100 years too early. Koji told the woman she could do something like that, but he could not remember the little girl's name and was thinking of taking her back to the place to calm her down while he coughed a bit. As they continued walking, his condition kept getting worse. When the port neared, he began coughing harder after a few seconds, suggesting a cold and a possible infection. Two might be there. Hoji decided to summon the miracle light to fix it, assuming it was just fatigue. He noticed the light's color was very different from before, so they needed to see a doctor as soon as possible. They tried to understand what lay ahead because the condition could worsen, but Nari warned it was life-threatening, and they had to return to the living world immediately. She was even willing to cut her wrist and give him a cup of her blood so he could heal right away, but that went too far. Putting the plan aside, they reached the port and met the couple who had been waiting for them, smiling. When he waved back at them, he began coughing heavily again. His condition worsened quickly. The very next second the cough brought up some mushrooms, and it kept going. That clearly showed he was infected too. The couple became worried because they had not returned on time and feared they had fallen into the same trap. Between Nari and Koji, they saw the woman's face. She remembered that the girl resembled the woman they'd buried in the forest, and the others were shaken and yelled that the girl they'd brought had died 2 months ago. But before Nori could understand, the girl behind her apologized in a quiet voice and then attacked her from behind. It landed on her neck and caused blood to splash everywhere, as if she had even taken a chunk of flesh in an instant. Koji was worried. He turned, but his vision was already failing, and moments later his condition worsened as he collapsed, coughing and spitting blood. He remembered getting too close to the woman to comfort her, and that it was his fault they had ended up like this. Tears filled his eyes as he blamed himself for Nari's fall, and taking in the scene, realized he and the couple would soon meet their end. As the girl got closer, he heard her apologize and ask him to run away from her. Her body kept moving toward the boy to eat him. When Koji saw her face, he realized tears were streaming down and that she was in intense pain and terror. Yet her body moved on its own to eat him. Her face was very seductive at that moment, but before she could reach Koji, someone grabbed her from behind. Nari was fine and ready to face a special infected human as a plant-based goddess. This time the other little girl had no time to grasp the situation, and Nora suplexed her, sending her body through an arc, suddenly burying her face right into the earth. During the attack, she even created an antidote in midair, and with the task complete she rushed to Koji and pulled the antidote from her bag. They asked him to open his mouth and poured it all into him while he was still coughing and in pain. She immediately made an opening, blood splashed into her bodhi, and she spat it at Koji, so he could drink a little of it. As soon as he did, he began to feel good and the mushrooms were washed away from his bodhi as if nothing had happened. Deeply worried about him, Nari went to the child to give her blood because the others were also unwell and she needed time to find a possible solution. She told the ELF couple they were going to take a break and asked them to protect the membrane, but the couple did not understand what she meant. She decided to give them a hands-on demonstration, and Midway began crafting a wooden shield while hugging Koji, and a bubble-like structure quickly formed, covering both of them. Oji kept holding her as she said everything would be fine with a seductive expression. She was ready to offer her entire bodhi to protect him. Koji's vision faded, and as he slipped into unconsciousness, his brain began talking to itself. I tried to understand what really happened and kept thinking about the infection and the girl's apologies. Reaching back, he saw a small woman who kept crying from guilt. She looked exactly like the elf girl he had met in the village, and the boy, moved by her tears, tried to comfort her. He reassured her he would find a way out of her suffering. At that moment, he snapped out of his dream and found himself inside a cocoon, fully present. It was the cocoon Nari had made herself, and because he could not see the girl at all, he searched constantly until he found her body hanging there, and when the cocoon broke, he felt relief because she was small and realized they had returned to the real world. They both started coughing, and Koji felt like he had been brought back to his home through the floor. Nari kept coughing, but the moment she saw him, relief showed on her face when she saw he was finally awake, and he apologized for making her worry. While resting, they returned to the living world and were glad the repairs were finished, but the next sight stunned her because they had not come alone from that world. This time they were with the elf girl from last time. She still gave off the same aura. Recognizing her, Nari was not happy because she had attacked him from behind and asked Koji to tie her up since fighting was not an option at the moment. Koji calmed her down. Realizing no spores were being released, he knew there would be no further mutation. The girl was glad she couldn't do anything there. She understood what she was saying, and she was even ready to give her life because she knew she had killed everyone in the village. Tears in her eyes showed what she had gone through doing all that by herself. The complete guilt rested on her own body. It was still too much for a little girl. After they gave her water and a good bath, Koji wondered whether she felt happy about being in another world and about many other things she could not finish saying. It had already happened to her. Nari immediately apologized for pulling her out of nowhere. Koji learned there was nothing to worry about because her blood had already cured the infection. She made her drink it the last time they were at the place where Koji was still trying to find out what happened when he was unconscious and saw her crying. Sitting beside her, he asked what was really causing all of it. He wanted to know what had happened to her Badhai and what was going on back in the village. Ready to give her life if they hated her that much, the girl found that when they saw her face they could not kill her and only wanted to know why. The girl explained she had once been a mushroom that spread spores onto creatures and drew their nutrients, and over time she developed the ability to transform into a nutrient-absorbing creature. At that moment she found the body of a child buried in the forest when her friends left her. Badhai's scent was delicious to a mutant like her. When the elf vanished, she rooted above the grave and merged with the Badhai, which sparked her evolution, and after absorbing nutrients from the child's Badhai, she gained its memories and intelligence. Human nutrients tasted far better, so she immediately headed to the village with her memories, unable to forget the taste of elves. She kept walking, but the child's memories screamed at her. She tried to stop, but her hunger was too strong, and she ended up in the village. This all happened because she fed on some humans, which caused more deaths. In short, she caused the infections and lured others into her trap, and in reality they were just her food, coming whenever she was hungry. As the source of the infection, she couldn't stop herself, but the more people she ate, the more memories flooded into her. She tried to hang on, but the infected came to feed on the new nutrients, and in plain terms she was going through hell, with the memories unable to be consumed at all, whatever happened back at the village. Unable to get the thought through her Badhai that she wanted to eat Koji, she remained hungry. He decided to give her regular food that would work. He baked something quickly, served it to her, asked her to try it, and she took her first bite. Delight spread across her face, as it was the first time she had tasted something so delicious. That first bite made her understand what she'd done, but it also showed that fear ruled her, and she wasn't ready to die. Through tears, she begged them not to kill her. Nari, a girl, was completely absorbed in the story and thought it was a nightmare. When the day finally ended, Koji still had to return to the office despite everything he'd faced the day before, because that was the nature of corporate life. He planned to leave for home on time or earlier because he had something to do, when it was finally about to be fired and his shift was about to. As he rose from the table to leave, his boss suddenly called him over and told him to fix all the earlier papers and explain why they had not been done yet. This time, Koji spoke about doing all he could in a heavy, harsh way, and he said he had to leave early. This time the boss couldn't deny it. He hurried to the parking lot, got into his car, and drove straight home. I wondered how the child and Nari were doing. While he was writing, he saw both of them walking outside the place, and realizing it was wrong, he stopped the car, sneaked them in, and signaled to the person outside that he was kidnapping. Koji was upset they came out without any information, but the little girl's simple welcome back completely changed the mood. Nori apologized for taking her out and called her Chicky, the short name she had chosen, a much. The name meant happiness in that language, and Koji liked it because it was easy to say and had a good meaning, which made Chicky smile and blush on both cheeks. He wanted to teach them not to leave without any information because several things could be waiting. Nori said the real reason they came out was to have dinner and buy groceries. I was worried Koji might end up working late today too, and they did not want to spend the whole day bored at home. Koji knew they had to fix her outfit before going to the grocery store. One of the clothing shops stops her, and because her dress is eye-catching, she has to change into something from their world. He offered to buy her anything she wanted from the shop. Interested in wearing what Koji liked, she decided at that moment to try only the item he pointed out, since nothing else felt like her. After changing, the girl felt too embarrassed to come out at first, but when she did, the outfit looked fantastic, so they bought a whole pack of it, and when he got back home that night he was cooking dinner skillfully. Both girls were bathing. When they returned, the rice was finally ready. They were about to enjoy a great dinner. Koji was eating his food with chopsticks, and the little girl wanted it too, and since she did not know how, she asked the boy to teach her. Koji went out right away to get another pair of chopsticks. Then someone began teaching her by holding her hand from behind, and showing her how to use the suspicious scenery caught Nari's eye, but she was absorbed in her drink. After coming around a little, Chicky handled the chopsticks easily. She picked up a piece with them and offered it to Koji by hand because Nari had said he would be pleased. Right now Nari was completely lost in alcohol and knew he really could. She even told me that with the way their family was growing now, they were having a kind of fun. Koji also found the cute girls to be the highlight. He even offered the little girl a home for as long as she wanted, promising to handle everything so she would not have to worry. Hearing those reassuring words from back in the village, she wiped away happy tears, accepted the offer, and kept murmuring the word family while seeing a wife for. Koji slept with Nari tucked beside him in a small blanket, and he kept thinking about everything that had happened to him that day. Suddenly, he heard someone asking for his hand, and he was not resting. A moment later, someone caught Koji's hand, and he saw things more clearly. Chicky took the hen straight to her chest, unused to it. Speaking in a seductive tone, she was ready to let him do whatever he wanted, not flinching at all, while Koji had already lost control because he had not expected it, and she was doing it to thank him for what he had done. As the intensity rose gradually, she even began to respond. She pulled off her top while straddling Koji, ready to give him whatever he wanted. At first it felt very tempting that he was facing it, but because she did nothing she wondered if he wasn't in the mood, and Koji said that was not the case, and she knew how those things were done because the knowledge had been passed down through generations. A memory returned of the last time her granny had captured the village chief's eldest son to do so. Koji wanted a little more information, but he wasn't ready for it. Another odd surprise awaited. Nari was awake and drooling, and Chicky kept saying it had been her idea. Even though Nari kept talking, Chicky did not interrupt and went back to the other side. She made clear she did not want him to abandon her, and was ready to do whatever was necessary to stay by his side. Koji understood what the little girl was going through, so he gently patted her head and told her there was nothing to worry about, that no matter what happened he would not abandon her, and they would be together forever. Nari thought he was a sort of playboy, but Koji denied it at that instant, while she, relieved by the reassurance, he was happy because she wanted him to like her and was ready to do whatever it took, and everything was going well. At once she was told to put on her pajamas, since they would return to the previous world the moment they fell asleep. The same thing happened when they slept. Returned to the world where the cocoon had already broken, and the elf couple was still standing there caring for it. Concerned, the couple questioned his well-being and were confused that he had disappeared and then reappeared later. The elf stepped forward and pointed a finger at the woman. He asked again what she was doing there, because she was the reason everything happened and might be infected. Koji immediately stood his ground and said the girl was completely fine and there was nothing to worry about, but the elf couple refused to move, fear clear on their faces. Chicky kept apologizing nonstop, everyone thinking they would take her life in their anger. When things finally calmed down, Koji got them to explain what had happened. She called Nari to whisper in her ear, stepped in front of the couple, said she had healed the girl and would not attack anyone, and clarified that the girl's recovery came from the divine power in her blood. The male elf still couldn't make sense of what had happened, since the girl had been dead for the past 2 months. Nari had no answers and tried to dodge, starting to say, "This part might be more complicated." While they were still looking for an answer, I saw figures emerge from the forest, and it was the entire horde of elves approaching, it had been tied earlier to Nari's magic, and as everyone gathered, the male elf grew more concerned because he had seen them all infected. They clarified they felt fine and were fully recovered. He raised his finger at Chicky again. They said she caused the infection, and when she lost her power, everyone else was cured, and in that moment, the elves felt no hatred toward Chicky because while infected they had seen what she went through when she did it. They all knew it. The male elf still refused to accept it, worried the same could happen to their children later. Even though one of the infected tried to explain what had just happened to her, the other person didn't hear at all and punched the young woman, calling her a monster. The moment the punch was launched, all three were unable to move. Koji stepped in front of her and took the punch to his face. Other elves tried to hold him back. Koji realized the talk about shared consciousness matched what he saw when he found her crying in a corner. Wiping up the punch stain, he told them the infected girl was nothing to worry about and asked him to listen to her story. The elves realized the boy was also infected with her mushroom bacteria. He turned to Chicky and said they had no intention of doing anything to her. They knew she could not control what happened or how the infection spread, because she had already suffered more than they had while clinging to everyone's memories. As before, the male elf was not ready to accept her, because he saw her as a monster that should be eradicated immediately. Although they felt some hatred toward her, they had no intention of seeking revenge as a solution. The couple had a small argument with the woman, trying to convince her man not to worry since she was already terrified. Chicky clung to Koji, crying, as he apologized to comfort her. He told her she didn't need to worry because he would take care of her, and that would solve the problem. They chose one of the calmest ways to settle it, and afterward the elf villagers left for home while helping the person they freed from the forest. When they left, they told the man to return to the port because it was getting dark. On their way back, as they walked through, the story kept unfolding. He noticed by her steps that Chicky still felt a little unwell and wondered if she was okay. They took a short break. Chicky was fine, but Koji was not able to understand how to solve the bug right then and could find the right words to present it as a solution. Nari decided to lift her spirits by saying that what was gone was beyond their control and asking her to be happy in the present. Staying sad wouldn't solve anything and her feelings wouldn't change, so she shouldn't keep thinking about it. She decided then to make 2 chairs, telling them to live their life day by day. Properly and cheerfully, she invited them both to sit down. When Koji and Chicky joined her, they felt quite comfortable. It wasn't just a resting place. Nari had other plans. Using a wooden microphone, she addressed them both as passengers and told them they were going to take off. Nora's hens lifted both of them into midair, their seat belt keeping them secure. The place was very high, so she made a small microphone that reached Koji's ears to tell him to look at the sight above. Looking up at the dark sky, they saw many beautiful stars. Delighting them, she told the little girl an important message, that from then on they would live and enjoy the happy life they should have had earlier. Delight filled Chicky, and she was ready to live a happy life from then on. Nari, a goddess, refused to let them set foot on the floor and told them to stay while she ran to take them both to the port, and someone in a frame watched the whole thing. When the scene shifted, one of the group's beast women single-handedly took down the big whale and solved the problem of disease. Koji's pleasant expression delighted her, and her balloons looked pretty amazing right now. While bathing at an inn, she wanted to hear the story of what had happened there. According to her assessment, she would meet them shortly. Changing into her clothes, she looked like a witch holding a wand in her hand. The next morning, Chicky woke Koji, who had fallen asleep at the harbor. The bed felt different. Nari lay naked right beside him, and she had done it on purpose. Believing Koji would be happy to wake up like that, he still felt ashamed and asked to put some clothes on. The mermaid city was being rebuilt after giants appeared in the country. Karna also told them that rumors were spreading about their presence. No one knew the exact location. They only knew it was in an eastern country. Karna could not help and apologized, but then Nora ran over quickly and while doing so put back a whole block. She told them they'd head east to gather information about the other bugs that were circulating, and she was excited. Cheeky Kane ran to him while he prepared the breakfast she had gotten from the mermaid. When she offered it, the others recognized her because the story of who she was and how they met in the village had already spread. Cheeky greeted them gently, and they had already decided to head east after breakfast. When Koji began eating, he realized the meat came from the great terrace, the giant whale, and it was still fresh after so many days. Karna explained the meat didn't decay at all, and when Koji realized it wasn't normal, he looked at Nari. She turned away, uninterested in fixing the bug, and he had no answer for it. Cheeky, however, felt some magic and a blessing from it, while Karna had no interest in finding out what happened. Keeping a close watch on it, she knew it would be the key to revitalizing the town. Koji believed such an event would turn this into a tourist spot and knew the town's restoration might go well. Karna asked them to keep working to solve the world's problems. He told them they could stop at one of the spring ends on the way east and gather information there that could be useful. Taking out a pouch, she handed it to Koji and said it was the world's currency they might need to survive, feeling awkward about accepting money for that help. The mermaid gladly gave it to him because he had saved their lives, and since it was a fitting reward, Koji accepted it and decided to repay her. His relationships with the others left him effectively a kept man. That was a big compliment. That afternoon, Karna waved them off, and they were already packed with food and stacked. She asked them to be careful. They were going to head to the eastern land where the giant appeared, and all three looked pleased. Koji was curious about the ending she described, since he had never heard what it looked like in another world. He had once again, seeing all the drills beating their motivated Nate. On their way, they had already walked a bit and were wondering where the nearby inn was. At that moment, Koji realized he didn't know the value of money there, so Nari decided to explain using her health memory. Explaining it while they walked was a great idea. There were 7 types of coins in that world, including gold, silver, and copper, and when converted to yen, the total was about 32,000. Koji was not pleased and was just about to check the price. Nari told him the inn was already in sight and they would stay there for the night. They wanted to go inside together. The information was released suddenly. They were excited when they saw what it was holding. Then I realized the place was not normal, but clearly a gun shop. Gumma is a place north of Saitama Prefecture, where Koji lives and Nora, who came from the heavens, used to visit during her college days. Koji had vivid memories from there, including the food and the references, and now they were ready to face it. Even if it was a bug, their first step would be to check what was inside as soon as they entered. They discovered someone had been attacked and cast out of it by magic. They stood frozen, unable to react. They discovered the person had something dangerous, like a sword, hidden inside it as the witch stepped outside. Murmuring, she said the person who was hiding nearby and trying to stir up trouble in that sacred gunma had been abandoned. Seeing other guests waiting while Nori stood guard, she explained that the conditions change as needed. She said the man planned to rob the mermaid city while everyone was trapped in the giant whale and had bad intentions, so she took charge of cleaning up the mess. Koji could not understand what those words meant and explained they were not any kind of. Before he could explain, the brilliant magician refused to let any thief or troublemaker into the inn. After a brief chat and a bright smile, she promptly asked them to come inside and booked accommodation for 3 people, costing 1 small gold coin and 1 large copper coin, equivalent to 10,500 yen in Japan. When the others went inside, the witch began apologizing. She told them she had predicted meeting them in her future readings, though she was not very sure, and the men were relieved to clarify that they were not bandits. Nari asked about the fortune-telling, so the witch said she dabbled in information brokering and used her magic to learn about those people, especially when it came to subduing the great terrace and tending the elf village to solve the problem. Koji was amazed, and she explained that the people she had been bragging about were bandits who had drifted into the area when she went to the port using her old information, and others complained about them in a completely different way. The men waited for the next treatment, and she explained that she was the inn's bodyguard. It was crowded with people of many different races, all enjoying themselves. After leaving their luggage at the front desk, they found the facilities less a flaw and more a reminder of Koji's own memories of the place, and they were all already very hungry from the trip. They decided to go to the dining table where the witch was sitting with them. They were served delicious meals they had not had in a long time, and the witch thanked them for letting her join the table even though she had not asked. The others paid little attention to the conversation because they were praying to the gods before the meal. When Koji learned the girl sold information, he immediately asked about the giants appearing in the eastern country. She did not know much about that, but she was in touch with someone who had information about the city. When he asked again about it, she immediately asked for a silver coin because that was the price. As soon as she received it, she read the full pamphlet listing what the sale included, such as medical hounds or basic knowledge of magic. That information cost up to 5 copper coins. A hug from her was included as a complimentary gift. Koji found it very odd and was about to refuse. Chicky shouted her denial. Hugging Koji, she made it clear the right belonged to her. Nari then joined the scene, which Koji did not expect. The witch wasn't imagining things, and Chicky, being mischievous, asked her to lower the price because Chicky had already caused a scene at the entrance. They got a 1 copper discount, bringing the total down to 4. Chicky handled the household budget well. They handed her the 4 copper coins. They were told the city lay to the east and was not an ordinary city. She said she would give a practical demonstration since it had just become evening and asked them to gather in a room after they had eaten. She winked and said seeing it was far better than hearing about it 100 times now that they were finally done. They went to the hotel room they'd been called to and were given a pair of binoculars. Koji was using it at that moment to look at the city called Kazo that floated above the land. People called it the city's biggest tourist attraction, and the island was quite beautiful even though the witch had never seen it. Those words sparked a different excitement in the girls who heard them and both showed it there, so they needed to ask around in case there were other works since it was a tourist spot in another world. Koji asked her about the information she had and checked how trustworthy it was. They had a conversation that was not disclosed at the time. After breakfast and getting the information they wanted, they decided to take a hot bath. Koji was thinking about why the fare was 20 gold coins for the 3 of them to travel to the island. They could hardly grasp its value, and it would take them a very long time to earn it. Nari tried to tell Koji to calm down and enjoy the time until it was over, since this was their rest period and they should just focus on resting their bodies. He understood it all, set his troubles aside, and enjoyed being in the other world. Just then he heard that from the other side of the Fingal section. A noise came from nearby. Chicky was completely captivated by the size of the balloons, and Nari was content to praise them. Koji realized the group on the other side was really enjoying themselves. I wanted a quick peek, but got caught up in the trouble over the 20 gold coins. At that moment, a young, muscular man came up from behind, introduced himself as Calvin, and said he had a job for him. Koji became curious when a crocodile-like creature slipped in behind him and asked him to help with their trouble before he could even think about what had happened. He stood in the middle of a group of naked, muscular men. Given how those guys offered him the job, it still seemed like they were forcing it. He made the effort to ask what kind of work he would need to do to be there. They made it clear his only request was to slay a dragon for them. Although the girls on the other side didn't know what was happening, Koji saw his death before his eyes. As they were leaving the inn, the witch apologized for everything and asked him for money. That was necessary because she was already under contract there, and Koji understood he could not take her just for his own benefit, but the witch still offered help, saying she would provide support with the spirits if he returned before getting any further information. Earlier, Calvin called him to celebrate the trip they were leaving on the next day, and Koji had told everyone they were the ones who saved the mermaid city from the whale, but those guys wouldn't accept it, and Nari and the others didn't bother to convince them. 2 days after getting the request, they were already on their way to the mountain with many people behind them, and although it was not an official request, they attached their own meanings to it while he kept walking, and a man called him a savior, sure he would take care of everything. Nari saw no problem going to work because she wanted to fix a bug while they worked. When they reached a certain spot on the mountain, they heard a noise, and Calvin immediately told everyone to keep their distance because the stone dragging was finally starting. Nari stayed close to Chicky, worried she might be triggered by old trauma, and although people called it an easy job, it wasn't. The dragon before them was not something they could handle easily. The target was not a normal dragon, but a powerful one standing before them. Before they could find a way out, the dragon attacked, making it clear that numbers could not overlap it. Calvin told everyone to retreat immediately because it was their only chance to evolve. Nari stayed unfazed and told everyone to step back, intending to handle it herself. She instantly changed her appearance to that of a goddess. Covering it with wood and other plants, she told them she would find a way out and defeat it. Buoyed by the divine supply from Koji, she could tap far more strength on that rocky terrain. When the dragon realized an enemy stood before it, it prepared to fight. He immediately attacked her with a blast of stone breath, but she deflected it with magic and said it would not work. Already planning more moves, she was only getting started before the dragon could find a way to counter. Attacking from beneath the roots, she landed an undercut squarely on its face. When the stone dragon faltered, she seized the chance to break through in one move. Attacking with her entire mind, none of the tags could pierce its body. Facing the tough Bodhi, finding a way out seemed impossible. Meanwhile, Calvin's subordinates praised and encouraged the girl, confident she could do it. Their behavior changed when the dragon caught their attention. It shifted its attention away from the real enemy it was facing, and the dragon attacked both of them with a stone breath, but they could not respond. Once again, Koji stepped forward and used her magic to block the attack, keeping the breath from reaching its intended target. After tending to the party members under attack, Koji realized the monster had already switched targets. Curious to learn more, she let her guard down. The dragon seized the opening and immediately struck her hard with its tail from the right side. A sudden strike banished her to the mountain, and the fierce attack left her bleeding and shaken. When her friends hurried to check on her, she nearly fell, and Koji caught her again and told her to steady herself. Nari realized the dragon was much faster than it looked, and Koji was hugging her. She was told to absorb as much divine power as possible to heal her wound. Meanwhile, Chicky stood against the dragon, the shadow completely covering her. Gathering the little courage she had, she decided to stand up to it. Although she looked like a mere pebble beside it, she knew that if this continued for a while, everything would happen just like last time in the village, and she would be left alone. At the inn, she remembered the witch saying she had enough talent within her. Even Nari remembered that Chicky couldn't draw any magic from the meat, but she did. Both of them wanted her to learn new techniques that would be much better in the future, and Chicky decided to go ahead despite the trouble, even though it might worry her. Following orders and wanting to help Koji, she focused all her energy and called on the spirit voices. On her first try, she gulped a lot of it, and Nari, surprised by her abilities as a talented child, said several things and asked her to repeat how she did it. Praising her amazing talent, she told her that her abilities were more than enough to achieve the magic she wanted, with prayers the easiest way. Nari explained that the stronger the power, the more potent the magic becomes at that moment. Chicky focused all her attention on praying as she tried to execute the move, determined to protect her friends from anything. When the dragon lunged, she immediately summoned the spirits and launched a palm strike at it. A summoned water spirit was unleashing a powerful torrent on that dragon. Her friends couldn't understand how the girl was using boiling water to repel it while Nari looked for an opening. She got it after Chicky's boiling water created openings so she could peel the dragon's tough skin. Having discovered a lot, she decided to hurry on while Koji remained worried about her body. She turned to reassure him that everything was fine and there was nothing to worry about, so Koji helped by holding her from behind. He told Chicky to move aside while she continued pouring water. Following the command, they concentrated all their power while Nari screamed to create an opening. At the same time, the piercing she made with her roots was enough to break through the dragon's thick hide, making it growl in pain. Everyone, themselves included, was stunned by what they had unexpectedly pulled off. They realized that everything they'd been saying since they began defeating the great terrace on their own was not a joke. Now they could see what true friendship looked like. They knew exactly what move they were making and felt a new level of excitement after clearing another level of bugs, and with that, they cheered after finishing the mission to subdue the stone dragon. Suddenly, a foul smell and an unexpected object emerged from the dragon's body. It looked both pathetic and dangerous, a shiny lump Koji took for a rock, but before he could understand, the men from before ran toward them. Hug Koji praised their spirits and congratulate them on the subjugation. They were glad the rumors about the stone dragon were true and that it feeds on rocks, and then he showed them the thing in front of them was not just garbage but valuable ores, gems, and gold, and they realized why they had been thinking of subjugating it. Koji wanted to split the supplies among everyone, but Calvin, kind-hearted, turned to them and said they had defeated the monster on their own, so all the supplies belonged to them and no one else should get any. Koji declined to tell them the achievement wasn't solely due to their part of the work because he couldn't find an answer. When the others were firm in their declaration, he turned to Nari. They clarified that they would donate half the reward to the village harmed by the dragon for reconstruction and split the rest equally among themselves with no further discussion. Koji was still glad to have an accomplishment since everyone risked their lives and the rewards should be split evenly. Those words sounded like they came from a goddess. The guests at the party were impressed by it. That night they decided to camp around the site, and while some were resting, the three friends sat around a bonfire, praising the battle. By then the woman was completely drunk while her divine power recharged. Chicky apologized for not using the magic sooner. Nari saw it as a blessing, but Koji didn't know how she could do it since he'd never seen her practice it. It was from the inn, and he recalled the witch had even mentioned it back at the place while she was all stiffed up. Chicky was not happy. They had to pay for the information, but Koji did not mind and raised a toast to thank them for their help. Chicky was delighted by the praise, but Nori then reminded them about the bug. That had been their previous target in the city, and now their lives were at stake again, while the little girl sipped from her glass, feeling awkward. She named the drink coffee and found it more respected for its smell. Koji then handed her a regular coffee instead of a black one, even though she had never had it. It felt much more soothing and relaxing when they were just in the middle of it. Calvin rushed over and asked Koji about the drink. That was incredibly good. He wanted to sell it in the city, where demand would soar and they could make a lot of money, so he was interested. Calvin grew more interested in the source of that thing, but Koji could not reveal anything about the other world. So he agreed to buy wholesale from him, without revealing the arrangement, so he could resell it for a profit. Koji also realized they needed funds to survive, and then decided to. He joins his friends in a discussion to reach a conclusion, then goes inside the tent. After hearing everything, Nori suggested using her power to grow the coffee the way coffee farmers do. Her focus was on the fortune that would cover their travel expenses, but the idea stalled because they didn't know how to do it, and Chicky stepped in to help, and told them there was a faster way to handle the demand if they fetched it from the other world and sold it to him. Nari thought the idea was pretty good, but felt unhappy because Chicky had a better one. It became known as the Great Coffee Peddling Operation after they agreed to whatever he wanted. Calvin was eager to start the business after coming down from the mountain, but Koji told him to wait because it would take him a long time to get it, and while Koji was thinking, Calvin wanted the timing of the supply to be perfect. Word of his return emerged out of nowhere, and at first it startled Calvin. He was launched back, and Koji could not provide any information or return to the real world again after fixing a bug. He felt heavy again, and it seemed he had brought an unexpected companion with him once more. Calvin was the one carried against his will this time. Nari stepped forward to explain, as she always did when a guest arrived. After the scene ended, Koji realized it was already morning, and he had to rush back to the corporate world to work his butt off to survive, and as he hurried, he received a call from a coworker back there, Huti. He told him something the people in the background could not understand. The very next second he jumped and screamed at the unexpected news, and when the call ended Nora ran to ask what had happened. The boy, expressionless and looking sad, said his company went bankrupt. This news shocked everyone in the room. It did not make clear that Koji was now unemployed, and the others could not understand the words being repeated. We remember the bankruptcy notice on the office door saying the company was closing, but it did not explain why. The boss was not in any condition to talk about it. He had been walking there for as long as he could remember. This time he wouldn't budge, because he had already moved into the world he wanted. After a while, he returned home. They greeted him with smiles. He finally told them the bankruptcy was real and there was nothing to hide. Nori looked for a better solution, because the boy was spending a lot of time for little return, and he was relieved they had plenty of time to fix the bugs. He truly saw his work as a salvation. Calvin believed he had to keep working because she had something that would shape his future. The news shocked him, and he wanted to know more, but she decided not to tell, and he was not interested in such conversations. Someone stepped forward to ask him to continue what they had been discussing the day before, and since everything was settled. After stocking up on coffee for the trip, they decided to head back to town. Again, he climbed into the vehicle, and they walked outside toward the supermarket. Calvin was stunned by the buildings and the mechanism. Koji explained that the car ran on gasoline to power the wheels, and it was traveling at high speed. Everything there was much stranger than what they had in the utopia, he explained, and he needed to make changes to attract more people. They led him to a purchase shop, while Koji went into a gold shop. To raise cash, he marketed the shop. After selling the jewels, he bought a large amount from the shop, which turned out to be a good fortune. With enough money to buy a mountain of coffee, they decided to get moving. Calvin wanted the thing, but everyone knew that because of his current condition, they couldn't take him straight to the mall. They led him up the escalator to a shop inside the mall, which surprised him. Change him into the country's regular clothes. The outfit looked good as the girls checked the others and approved. As always, they went to a restaurant to fill their stomachs, and Calvin enjoyed the taste of his meal. He liked everything, including the pork, while Nari, as always, tried to eat as much as possible. They finally reached the food market, filled and piled high with goods, and Calvin was surprised to see indoor markets in that country. He was focused on the sauce he had tasted only a short while before, and he also wanted more time to travel the country when they returned to collect the stock. He knew he could not stay in one place in Utopia, but when he told him about it, he suggested using the box he shared with his coworker. Koji clarified that it was only in that country. It surprised him so much that he paid for it out of his own pocket. Tell them they would use this for the reunion. In fact, the bells arrived. 2 people sat behind them with a ring, and both gave a demo so they understood how it worked. Calvin was glad he had found something that would keep them connected for a long time, even back in Utopia. When they returned it, the conversation finally ended. Nari disliked that the boy had brought magical items into the country. She told Koji not to use those materials in that world, since any commotion there would earn her a scolding from a superior, and Nari knew the superiors watched everything and knew what happened in the other world, which could cost her the job and send her back. Callan told her she meant they should avoid using it more than once and understand the requirements, including the sauce. When they left, market officials decided to proceed with the purchase. They bought a large amount of stock. They had to run back and forth to bring the materials to the apartment, and as it stretched into the evening, they chose sukiyaki for dinner, which looked fabulous. 3 people had become 4, and they were enjoying their feast. After that, they stepped out onto the balcony and talked. Nari said Chicky also seemed to be enjoying the moment. Oji realized they had enough coffee for now, and knowing Calvin might come to the Sky City was reassuring. He wanted to know what restoration they had already done to the Utopia, because fixing bugs was fun, but he wanted a clear example of how rewarding it was. Nari knew they could only do that after the inspection back at the heavens began, but there was a problem. Her tone made it clear there would be no problem if she solved the issue herself, but if she returned to the heavens for consultation, they might replace her and change her assignment, and another god would take her place. Nari knew it was the right thing, but she made clear she wanted to be the one to take care of Koji. She stayed until the very end and then asked to be forgiven for not suggesting it sooner, and Koji, seeing the girl's tears, understood what she meant. He was ready to go without further clarification, because it was his responsibility to keep them together until the very end. Filled with excitement, the woman jumped toward him because of what he had done. The next day would be busy, so they went inside to rest when they returned to the utopia. Koji was carrying a huge suitcase filled with all kinds of materials that they were going to sell down the mountain, and he was struggling to get the car down. Calvin offered to do the job for him, but Koji chose to handle it alone. While Chicky drank water from her fingers when they were added, a familiar voice reached them, and the witch had returned on her broom. Coming down, she praised the others for defeating the stone dragon on their own, and with her bodyguard contract finished, she joined them and decided to head up to the Sky City. Someone wanted to come along, and Koji was simply glad to have another companion he could trust completely, so they headed to the Sky City as planned. That could be seen from there. Back in the city, inside one of the castles, a woman arrived and addressed Bella in a formal tone. He tried to tell her that at this rate the city would fall, but Bella already knew. She backed onto the table, stood up, and looked out the window at the island where the disturbance was peaking. People saw this as a curse. During their visit, they rode an elevator that took them straight toward the city, while the sky brightened as it climbed higher. Calvin was glad the guys got to the point. Nari helped them again with her magic, getting them there easily. Koji wanted to know the real reason the witch had decided to come to the city. She clarified that her job was to sell information and that she enjoyed their company more. They talked for dozens of minutes and kept talking. They finally reached the top of the Sky City, where a fairy-like creature greeted them. Koji was eager to know the place's current condition, and his curiosity grew as he got closer. Stepping out of the elevated camp, Koji's breath caught at the view before him. The city looked fabulous and was even better than they'd heard. Meanwhile, the witch was impressed by the scenery. Only Calvin had been there several times, and he said the city was ordinary and they'd get a better view from that spot. The information was staggering, and as Nari looked at Koji, he realized they needed to fix the bug and decided to move forward into the city. Chicky, however, was not fully conscious because of the lift and was no longer enjoying it. Arriving at the market past the inspection gate, they saw the woman from earlier tasting the coffee and enjoying it, and Koji told her he was there to sell it and said it posed no danger. The woman recognized Koji as the representative of everything and then whispered in his ear to get a bit of the coffee for free. That would let him slip into the city without any problems, or he would have to wait at least half a day. Though it sounded illegal, Koji agreed to give a sample because they had 23 bags. They could still make a profit, so he agreed. Once the coffee was paid for, an island permit was granted. All of them went inside while she saluted, as if they had been invited earlier. Nori was worried that some people were waiting while others were getting in, and Koji did not want to tell them about the bribe he paid her to make it happen. Alvin realized he had handed over some reference samples that let them in, and he asked Noria about it. Koji explained that this was the first time anything like this had been brought into the land, that a sample was required, and that the men were ready to return it as an apology. Relieved not to have lied, he was happy, and Nari, pleased by his clarification, thought they had just been lucky and that nothing was wrong. They entered the city, and a guard welcomed them at the main gate. When they got there, they found it packed with people. The town's atmosphere was more pleasant and welcoming than anywhere else. Shopkeepers were trying to sell as many souvenirs as possible, and Nari wanted to buy some too. Koji decided to take a walk after they found a place to stay in the area. Chicky even called her a glutton. Always looking for a chance to travel, she even seemed hungry when she saw the food stalls there. Flushed, she decided to wipe the drool away, but it seemed the guys were just joking. That was a bit embarrassing for her. The three women had a little chat and a small spat, and it seemed endearing. Later on their walk, they stopped at the jewelry store where the merchant examined the material and offered the jewel for 28 gold coins. Nari was pleased with the price. Koji realized that even after taking out Calvin's share, they still had enough to cover the prepaid tickets, so they wouldn't have any problems from then on. That day we were at Rainbow Wing. To accommodate 5 people and 2 horses, they chose 2 rooms, one for 2 men and one for 3 women. They were ready to set up an extra bed for the child, and Chicky couldn't understand. It looked like she was the only one they pointed at, and she pouted in anger once more. Inside the room, Koji rested and found it far better than living in a tent, while Calvin prepared for the next day before going to dinner. He explained the entire plan to him. His plan was to fix the bugs at Sky City too. Koji didn't find any specific bug there, and Calvin couldn't recall anything strange from his last visit. Relieved there were no bugs, he knew they could finally explore the utopia this time, and when a knock came at the gate, Koji went to open it. He found the girl from before there with a guest, a beautiful woman named Bella, who served as the city's representative. Koji wasn't expecting a guest and asked for clarification right away, and she was excited about the powder she called coffee. People were slightly dependent on it, so she decided to detain the representative for selling an addictive substance. It was. The arrest came suddenly and harshly, and within minutes Koji was behind bars. Back at the inn, Calvin ran straight to the girls' room to tell them Koji had already been detained. Nari was shocked and added that the island's representative had come to the room and made a fuss about the coffee they were given at the checkpoint. The witch decided to act to get him out of there because they weren't willing to have their friend arrested over that. Without hesitation, all four barged in angrily to reclaim their master again. Back at headquarters, inside the interrogation room, Koji kept shouting for an explanation because he was not allowed to go outside, even though he had passed the examination with no problems. They said they had prepared a relief plan to address the oversight. They told him that although bringing addictive drugs was punishable by death, they had a plan to avoid it. If he didn't just want to leave, he asked, and learned the girl wanted to know the location. The dealer who sold them the coffee. The moment felt awkward because Koji couldn't reveal anything about the other world, and her words made it sound like she was scouting it for a business plan. There really was nothing wrong, and he questioned why, since they knew it was considered a mildly addictive drug, they wanted to confiscate even more this time. Too humble to say more, he fell silent. Her companion told him they needed to be firm and to say everything honestly. Those words came out of nowhere, and she started crying and screaming nonstop. Her apology for whatever she'd done startled Koji. He asked what it all meant and learned the girl was really broke and had been in desperate need of money before. Before he could make another move, the interrogation room was blasted open by magic, and Nori stepped in. Believing the person sitting in front was the culprit, he was about to attack. Koji asked about the situation, but he did not know either because the girl was still crying and not saying a word. Once things settled, they moved to the meeting room where everyone sat around a round table. Koji learned the Sky Island anomaly was causing the city's financial collapse and that the solution was to bring it under control. The place had been busy with tourists, but that stopped 6 months ago. A sudden issue stopped operations and quickly drained the budget. Many people reported messes needing immediate repair after a shake hit the city and broke things, and all of this happened on another island where no one was present at the time. After they moved the staff to the main island, the cloud completely engulfed the site. Everything seemed like a rigid plan made for the day people vanished from the island. The whole city relied on tourism for its livelihood, so it could not be kept only as a scenic preserve, and the mountains and trees were used for repair materials, while Bella kept crying because she needed money and labor costs were soaring. Bella flashed back to the fallout from her predecessors starting the tourism business 5 years ago, and month after month the council blamed her for everything, which calmed her a bit. She pleaded with Koji to help them by telling the coffee supplier. Koji understood that what was happening was just a bug that needed fixing. Turning to the root of the problem, which was more than just securing funds, he asked permission to inspect the land, and she had trouble understanding him until Nari stepped forward and introduced herself as the cultivation goddess who could resolve the anomaly. They even gave examples of how they had cleared the case in Elf Village and Mermaid City, all to win that girl's trust and use it. Her delighted face made it clear she truly saw them as the city's saviors, and Koji realized with his team that they were on a mission at that moment. They would start investigating the island's bug the next day. With tears in her eyes, Bella knew they had really come to rescue her. The next day, they boarded the carriage to go to the Sky Departure and Arrival Terminal. From that vantage point, they could see what was happening in the city. It was completely shrouded in clouds called the Dragon's Nest. A mystery affected something. Calvin noticed something odd in it and told them there were no rainbow koi. They were believed to be giant fish that fed on rainbows, shown in rainbow colors, and legend said anyone who saw one would have good fortune. The woman said that since the Sky Island had been trapped in the clouds, no such creatures had appeared, and the witch had never heard of any falling to the ground, so they must be there. To investigate the words, they knew they had to break through the clouds, reach Sky Island, and ask about the people heading there and the route ahead. Nari whistled a bird call, and a huge eagle appeared to carry them to the location. Nari called it a little bird with intense lightning that seemed pretty dangerous to Chicky. Ready to seize the opportunity to solve the problem, Koji felt flustered but said he would check it himself. The others agreed on the location and planned to meet later. Chicky still wasn't ready to leave Koji behind, so he decided to go along. Seeing their courage, even Calvin was ready to take on the task because they were the ones who would save his world and would not hold back when the time came. He asked the man to share his reason for joining the company as a travel companion rather than as a partner. The witch was pleased. She laughed and told Koji he could hire her because she might be useful when needed. With everything planned, the Grand Hawk was ready to carry them all in a cage. Guarded by the ladies, everyone was confirmed ready, and the plan was to ride the Grand Hawk while Nari used her magic to lift herself up and grab the basket on Sky Island. Later, the hawk would drop the basket from the sky, and while deflecting lightning with reflection magic and using Nari's absorption powers, they planned to board the Sky Island. The plan was for the Grand Hawk to take them straight to the island, but the magical barrier made controlling the hawk impossible, and the attempt became a desperate measure. Throughout that time, the woman prayed for everyone's well-being. The plan seemed to change suddenly, and everyone sensed trouble. They understood what was really going on. Bella spotted the rainbow fish that were trapped inside and trapped they could not get out, knowing that when the ball dropped it would cause serious trouble because the reflection magic would not work well. They still went ahead with the plan. Through the well, the lady was told to lower the cage to where someone could pull it as they worked to get inside the island. Both that and Nari were fired up, and the three who didn't budge when the plan was announced were two. Confident, she ordered the Golden Hawk to carry out the command. The ball fell at high speed, and everyone looked unconscious. Only Chicky and Nari were awake, checking on everyone else's condition. Koji regained consciousness and saw that everyone was mostly safe and had reached the Sky City together. The island looked almost annoyingly beautiful. They recalled it was all thanks to the witch, who reflected the magic with her own. She accepted the praise with deep appreciation and felt proud to be her student. It was time to begin the investigation, so they asked the woman if anything unusual had happened before the clouds covered the island and learned the castle was the most suspicious. Despite the huge hole in the ground, they kept trying to figure out what it was, which seemed strange. The woman in glasses told them she had seen a giant metal doll lying around on the island, moss-covered in places, and it had become a tourist attraction. Calvin cut in mid-sentence and pointed at something. Told them the doll was coming from far away. It had an unusual shape, like a furious giant. They still thought it was an artifact, but the woman was confused by how it moved. As soon as Giant detected the humans, it marched forward and fired arrows with its arm. Nari stepped in front to protect everyone, and then she used her plantation magic to block the arrows. The witch stepped forward to play her part with magic. They used lightning to crush the monster immediately, and it worked well. With the stone gallant on the ground, they did not notice something waiting to its right and kept praising her for handling everything so boldly. Another giant moved straight toward Chicky, leaving her startled and unprepared to react. Everyone realized they had to use an incantation because Calvin couldn't reach in time to protect her, and the monster was too close to attack, so this time Koji stepped up and struck that monster right on the end. He yelled that he could do nothing about his Chicky girl. Chicky felt embarrassed by that statement. Calvin found an opening and cut the monster in two. Checking if everyone was okay, Koji hurt the right side of his hand while blocking that punch. He twisted the story, telling them everything was fine and that the girl was okay. They told themselves only two creatures were there and moving to attack them. Nori clarified that their count was wrong because many more were approaching from the front, so there were certainly more than two. Koji realized his bear punch would not solve the problem there, so he immediately asked the witch to take command, but she knew she could only use her magic 5 or 6 more times given her physical and mental limits, and that doing so would kill her. Unaware of what lay ahead, they did not notice that the monsters had already taken up positions to shoot arrows at them. Nari stepped forward to protect the others with her plant magic. While the woman told them to escape toward the city, she said she knew a shelter there and assured them they could run that way. Nari held the plantation shield while everyone ran, telling them not to take the lead. The guards suddenly realized others were trying to run away, so they changed tactics. Flying to get ahead of them proved very bad because they were in command at the time. They thought they needed to do something else. Nari asked Koji to hand over the divine power immediately from behind. As the divine power was restored, Nor did she use her magic to knock them all down at once. This time her magic survived, causing more damage than they expected. It didn't matter now because, amid the chaos, one of the giants had found a way out and was about to attack them with magic. Nari did not notice it at first, then the monster suddenly attacked, and she put her own bodhi on the line to protect Koji. The damage was far worse than they expected. Oji recoiled from the move as the girl cried in pain from the sudden attack. She felt a little unwell and could not take care of everyone, even though she was a goddess. They were completely caught off guard. Monsters kept attacking, so the witch used her magic 5 or 6 times to protect them. Once they reached a place to take shelter, they decided to enter the tunnel. Koji lifted the woman into his arms and ran as fast as he could, keeping her from further harm. Calvin slid the door shut immediately to make it safer. Using her lightning magic, the witch quickly sealed the gate with rubble to keep the monsters out. The same thing happened when those giants stayed behind. Someone in the control room watched everything and disliked that the entrance had collapsed and that they had entered the castle from outside. Labeling them invaders who ravaged their lands, he warned they could not simply escape. In the tunnel, both users were in severe pain, and Koji used his magic light to heal the most badly hurt woman, preparing to grant the divine absorption power again. Chicky clarified that in that condition, they could not simply boost their absorption, since it would be very low, and the only solution was for them to live together to make it intense. However, the woman did not understand or realize this at all. It was hard to deny that absorbing divine power was the most effective way, and Koji struggled to picture the lady that way because he was not ready. As he searched for a way out, the lady said a deep keech would work in that situation to restore composure. Thinking it was a good idea and not too demanding, he decided to try it and immediately went for a deep, giving much deeper keishas while becoming fully absorbed in it. Meanwhile, Chicky did not like it. Calvin covered the young girl's eyes to keep her from seeing it. In time, Nari fully recovered from the pain and was glad she had taken a step up and felt more grown-up. What made her happiest was that it was with Koji. Chicky felt left behind by what she hadn't managed to do and was ready to discuss it later. After a while in the tunnel, they slipped into the castle by removing one of the tiles. Reaching up, they found a hidden passage into the castle and prepared to explore it, where something else they had not expected awaited them. When the voice sounded, they turned and saw an old man standing with the monsters, angry that they had invaded his kingdom and ready to kill them immediately. He ordered the monsters to attack them with arrows again. It looked like he was controlling them. Nari wanted to know how the man had been left behind when everyone else had returned from Sky Island to the mainland, and the only possibility was that he had entered the island from the city, but that was impossible because they had been watching for 24 hours after the incident. To make matters worse, the man claimed the island as his country, and the others ignored him completely. Nari was ready to take command again, but Chicky wanted to play her part. This time she stepped forward and told them not to attack because they had only come to investigate the disturbance on the island. Her friends looked much more worried than she did, and when Nari formed a barrier to protect her from the arrows, that calmed her down. He told her she wanted to discuss it with them. She gently stepped out of the shield, startling the man, and told them again they were only there to investigate the island's problems and would not cause any trouble. He took offense at the word island and asked what year they were in. They did not know which era he meant. He clarified that this must be the era adopted in the region many years ago. They answered that it was 1,000 years ahead of where they stood because the year was 282 in the pro calendar. The calendar was already gone. Finally, the man began to understand the situation and mumbled that no one came back once the whole country was covered in moss. He was mumbling to himself as Chicky once again questioned the man's identity. Suddenly, he declared himself the country's king. Everyone was shocked because they wanted more clarification. He turned and asked everyone to come to the meeting room for a little more discussion. 2 guards accompanied them, and everyone sat around the table while the man said he had been resting for quite a long time. After 2,000 years with no understanding, they asked him to explain everything in detail because it was all very vague and they suspected he was causing the clouds. The self-proclaimed king told them that when he woke up, an island method appeared out of nowhere. He quickly activated the system. The old man briefly recounted the events so far. Legend says that long ago a mysterious plague swept the land and killed 90% of the population. Although the cause of the outbreak remained unknown, the other survivors chose to descend to the surface for fear it might happen again, and as king he refused to join them, staying behind to continue investigating. After years of investigation, they found that the magical essence in the airstream reaching the Sky Island was harming their genes. He quickly moved the island out of the flow and then searched tirelessly to bring back those who had left the island. Finding the scattered people was difficult, and those found had adapted to life on the surface and did not return. He urged the people to always return to the island, and it is said he entered a stasis device to escape loneliness. He had set it to activate the moment any of the citizens returned, but he had never imagined it would remain dormant for 2,000 years. The machine was so full of glitches, it did not activate when people from the other realm entered, and the clouds they had just seen outside were a defense system. He kept the robots, which switched the mindfish into intercept mode as part of the system. Everyone was shocked by the next statement because earlier the fish had been like high-flying weapons charging the enemy, so he realized they were saved only by the witch's magic and would have been dead otherwise. The woman was unhappy with his decision because she believed contacting other people on the island would have made things better. The king did not understand and summoned the invaders who were trying to enter the country with an armed force, but they had no idea what he was saying, so to show them proof with a quick lift of his wand, he projected a hologram showing how many people had entered the place, which was surprising for that kind of technology. He said the footage was from 172 days ago and believed the clear picture showed those men trying to invade the country. The leady clarified that this was the research team sent to investigate the vacuum phenomena. The king's actions were also justified because he activated the defense system out of concern. Nari told the old man to look closely and understand they were just onlookers with no bad intentions. During the expansion, access to the island was restricted for an investigation, and tourists became hostile while armed soldiers tried to calm them. The king realized he had been wrong not to review the footage and, at Nora's request, they agreed to deactivate the defense system so they could discuss it with the neighboring island and keep the island as a tourist destination. The neighboring country was also regarded as part of Sky Island Kazo. Unwilling to give up his country, the king chose to live alone, but Nori warned him that doing so would leave him without any help. Being a king with no citizens would be strange, like a goddess with no one to save, and she added that many people in the neighboring country depended on his approval to survive. He should think it through and decide to live together. They said the island was a big attraction, and that if it could not be used, the lives of the people living there would be ruined. Because the Lade represented Bella, she even begged the man for his support. After a long pause, he smiled slightly and said he was Basil. It immediately ordered the gates opened when approval was received. Ready to release it, he planned to tell them to follow him to where they would deactivate the defense system, including the clouds, and wanted to meet the representative to teach them how to run a nation. She was very pleased after receiving the clarification. One thing remained: the king still had questions and asked who the other two were. Include Nari and Koji and ask why they are on the land. At last, suspicion narrowed to two people, and Nari's explanation made it clear this was an ideal world, and the king was satisfied. The defense system was finally deactivated, and the island was once again ready to operate as a tourist destination. Representatives met for the next case, and the king knew about their poor finances and was very angry. Bella could not say a word as he kept lecturing. She was appointed city councilor to advise her. The tension eased for the moment, and Koji felt sorry for Bella and wanted to do something for her, since she looked like she might cry from the constant scolding. Nari decided to change the subject and abruptly began talking about their wings. Unexpectedly, she predicted that Bella was a descendant of the king, turning the meeting into a fateful encounter. Even the king had an idea, so he asked the lady for her weapons, and as she handed them to him, he decided to run a DNA test using her bond. A needle emerged from it to check the blood data, and when the test finished, the blood testing showed a 99.5% chance of blood relation, and he declared they were blood relatives. That was exciting news in plain terms, with one clarification that anyone with wings in that country was related to the king, and after 2,000 years, the king was glad he was not alone. But the woman cried because of the needle. He had put it in without consent. Basil realized he was wrong, apologized, praised her work maintaining the city, and offered to look after it from then on. After their family tie was revealed, the man became kinder than before. After fixing the bugs, they checked their finances. When the meeting ended successfully, they went to Sky Island's observation site and saw the fish in real time. They were welcomed by the other robots through a cloud, a spectacular sight. The king stepped forward to help them and personally show them around the city. This time they were welcomed onto a red carpet. Everything was going well, so they decided to capture the moment with a photo. After it was done, the king thanked Koji for coming to keep the city connected and credited him for it, and Koji in turn thanked the king for allowing them to have a beautiful sight. At that moment the photo was taken and a memory was made. It was time to head back, and they were thanked for using the Sky Island, so they left happy because their visit had been free. At that moment they remembered they didn't have to pay fees on their commission. The witch offered to join their crew and said everything would be free if they could let her continue traveling with them. The offer was very valuable, and Koji was not willing to leave it behind. After getting confirmation from everyone, the group was ready to head to the next destination with the team, which looked like a lot of fun. Chicky came to Koji to talk and asked if she wanted a real conversation about last night. Koji looked confused and suggested doing it later, so she led him to a specific place that felt spooky, like a store where he had to enter a particular room. Thinking it was for dinner, he was called as a guest to room 204, where someone was waiting for him. When he arrived, he found a woman in a cute outfit waiting for him, and when she turned, she looked cheeky in it. He was wearing something he had not expected at all. Approaching him, she said she had been waiting for him to begin liking her at that moment. Seeing him blush, she reminded him of what he said last night at the castle when one of the monsters tried to attack her. While he was possessive toward her, she asked for clarification, but Koji couldn't explain and only praised her for being cute and a very good girl. She couldn't tell whether the guy liked her. Left with nothing, Koji realized he truly liked her. As soon as he spoke, she pushed him forward to give a bright kiss. The cyst suddenly worsened because she believed something like that would not cause harm. He wasn't prepared for what came next. She immediately pushed him onto the bed, and Koji flushed even more, his face completely red. Later, she eased onto his lap in an awkward position and made clear she would not hold back from then on. The guy liked her and then slid his hands into her shirt. His reaction made it clear it was his first time, and his flustered face confirmed it. Koji didn't even have a chance to ask for anything himself. Things intensified as the woman kept moving in to get close enough to him to take the kiss immediately. The girl enjoyed it fully, as if she had been waiting for it all along. The next morning, in front of the wing pavilion, Nari could read Koji's face and tell he had clearly enjoyed himself the night before. He tried to deny it, but he couldn't because Nari had designed Chicky's clothes, and Chicky had sincerely thanked her for everything. Leaning close, she whispered in Koji's ear so the lady could do the same, and he would not be blamed. Nari's face lit up with an extraordinary smile. Embarrassed, she quickly changed the subject to make small talk and move on to the next destination. No one knew where they were really headed because she had already planned to go to the eastern country, and it was unclear if they would stop in every town along the way to check for bugs. Collecting information and the supplies to rebuild would take time and money, so fully restoring the world would take them forever. The idea made Nari reevaluate things deeply because it was clearly inefficient. At that moment, they heard a voice from the sky explaining the problem, and a hole suddenly opened in the sky. All of them were finished, and no one could recognize the voice when another woman in beautiful clothes appeared and told them the goddess conference had concluded. Hoji recognized her as Nari's boss, introduced as Lady Sophia, carrying very large balloons and there to speak with Nari. Confused by her presence, Hoji asked for an explanation. At last he realized the day had come when they were to be rescued from life-threatening danger during a reassignment. Calvin was angry that the goddess had been taken and reassigned, so he screamed at Sophia that she was not in a position to make that decision. They were in trouble but could find a way out, and the witch felt the same, while Chicky refused to let her take Nari. Sophia calmly apologized for the rude behavior of the goddess they had sent. Instead, she told them it was a story about a savior and the saved and wanted to move the discussion elsewhere. Waving her wand over the floor, she told them she had been watching their every move. With the destination still uncertain, she had arrived for a reason, and he did not mention their repeated failures. Now she was ready to accept the reassignment. Koji stepped in, saying they'd handled all kinds of bugs before and could fix this one if Nari stayed, so he opposed replacing the goddess. He said he could do this only because of her. As he spoke those words, they were already in a distant place with a gentle breeze around them. Sophia explained she had never intended to be there for reassignment. Her voice changed and she said she had come to give them a scroll, and when they opened it, it was a map. The map was marked with bugs that showed them the locations they needed to go. Sophia explained that because Nori had taken the issue to top management, they had decided to give her that part. Only one person helped them by providing the carriage so they could focus on restoring Utopia. Sophia clarified further about changing the assignment. They could not because Koji had her at his side. She told him to take full responsibility because the goddess would never change, and it pleased them. Overly excited by the commands, Nari devoted herself completely to saving the boy. Sophia then left quietly. They informed them they had been watching her, and after a while both returned to the spot where Calvin stood, shocked by their sudden arrival. Relieved, they breathed deeply after the storm passed, then told the whole story to the others and showed them the map so they could follow along. Calvin was relieved they finally had something reliable to base their next moves on, and when one mark was placed on a specific spot, he told them that the terrain. What he remembered now was the Steam City agility. Midway through the conversation, Vila suddenly stepped in, smiling, to thank them for saving the Sky Island, and as she leaned forward, she decided to tell them about the city they were looking at. Known for its coal mines, the city had multi-legged machines powered by that coal walking through its streets. They named it the Steam Walker. Koji was clearly excited, his eyes shining as he wanted to see exactly how it looked because he loved mechanical things. He collected mechanical wristwatches, loved illustrations with a steam-like atmosphere, and used an image of Machine City as his computer wallpaper. If the town reflected his ideas, he was very curious. Bella wanted to offer them and tell them she could help carry them to the location with the Grand Hawk. Koji accepted the offer without a second thought and was delighted, even holding the hand of a woman no one else loved, and he asked her to send the Bella reunion to its representative. She explained the town's layout made the reunion bell unusable, so they sent a messenger who had to wait a few days, which was awkward, and the letter was carried by a pigeon. They spent several days at an exceptional facility specially arranged by Bella. A transfer issue happened at the location, but the fuss settled, and they finally decided to leave. They all launched via the Grand Hawk, which was set for the location, while the people on Sky Island waved them off. On the way back, they saw enormous mountains. Nari noticed the changing scenery and the light rain. Bella led them from the hawk and did well. Thunder rumbled and rain fell, and they worried for her, but the witch knew everything was fine because the lightning spirit was not nearby. The wind spirit warned her, and from that spot they could see the lightning spirit making a fuss on the other side. Koji hesitated over how part of the spirit should appear in the city. They soon reached the top of the drop point. They reached back and were released to the ground. They went straight to the mechanical steam walker. They could just see it at the main door. A woman came out and recognized Bella, whom she had not seen in a long time, and noticed the guests with her. Bella introduced the woman as Mia, the representative, and Mia already knew how they had saved Sky Island and about their journey solving the city's strange happenings. Koji gave a soft greeting, asked him to stop, and reminded everyone that the rain was heavy and they should go inside. Finished with her work, Bella decided to take the Grand Hawk back to the place, and her friend even waved them back. Koji decided to tell her, while showing a picture of the island, that he would visit it again whenever he had time. Bella felt a little emotional, so she wiped away her tears, wished them luck on their journey, and told them they would be awaited. They were in the carriage while the steam walker moved forward on its own. When shown the map, Sophia identified a mine marked in red. The town had relied on coal mining, but in the 2 years before she became representative. A thundercloud hung constantly over the mountain just outside town. A massive coal vein lay there, but the lightning kept people away, and the mine still yielded a few coal byproducts for the workers. Workers' evaluations showed the coal there would be exhausted in a few years, so at the relic excavation site the iris, ancient machines, and materials were to be reused. In those areas, underground items found near factories were sometimes used to build steamwalkers. They were trying to figure out what had caused the work they saw inside when Chicky pointed to a spot. They reported another mark, likely the lighting spot. That was awkward because there were 2 marks in the same town. The protagonist considered how even the witch had noticed and mentioned the lightning spirit, and he saw a bug mark on the ruins, but despite his high hopes for the town, he couldn't figure out the cause. They walked on through the steam walker until they reached their destination and were welcomed into the city where they lived. The protagonist looked at it with delight. He was pleased to find it exactly as he had imagined. Steamwalkers crowded the place, and he realized it was a true steampunk world. Looking up at the sky, he spotted a dome-shaped object. The protagonist tried to use the magic ball to contact Bella. It wasn't working at all, so he immediately asked them to go to where they would stay, suggesting Sophia's house because she had spare rooms and A big group was fun, everyone was happy, and she was glad to help with many things. Excited to be there despite the bugs, the protagonist wanted to explore as much as possible. With work to do, Sophia left the place on the steam walker. When she reached the excavation site at the ruins, the workers kept working hard and soon the surface came into view, but the layer was quite hard and reaching it was difficult. Several drills and walkers had already been lost. Something astounding awaited them when they found a dome-shaped. They sensed an unexpected presence beneath it and wondered what was buried there. In the rainy city, Nari was helping people as payment for the end, granting them whatever they asked for as a plant goddess. In the room, the witch told the protagonist they could not use magic. She wanted to tell him before going in, but she couldn't because a magic barrier covered the whole city. That stopped them from connecting and using magic tools at that location. The witch felt useless, but Chicky stepped in to say that was not true at all. She had always wanted to be there, and her dog ears looked much more attractive, so the reassurance felt awkward, but the witch found it adorable. At that moment, others arrived and said the emergency patch had been applied without problems, so they could investigate the bug themselves. Koji reassured the witch that, as both a magician and an information broker, she would be a valuable asset during their time. Nori brought Sophie L. Long to guide them to the target, and they agreed to plan countermeasures after assessing the situation. Grateful, the protagonist thanked her for the lodging and the tour, and she offered to help solve the city's problem however she could. One thing was troubling. Site workers were working hard, but things were not going well and the situation could become tense, so they needed to be careful. Calvin, a merchant, stepped in to sort things out. On site, while everyone was busy with their work, it was clear Calvin had turned things around because all the workers welcomed them. They settled things and moved on to look into the bug, but Sophia was shocked. Earlier, those people had looked very stern, and they were being treated well thanks to Calvin. Nori knew from the modern world that, thanks to that man's negotiation, the inspection would go smoothly. Without it, it would have been impossible. As he offered them coffee they found delicious, they gathered around Calvin in good spirits. At last they reached the spot and pointed out the dome-like structure, noting it was clearly made of a different material than the other mining structure. The material was so durable the steam walkers couldn't mine it further, and it was unclear if they could dig it out anymore, so even with the steam walker and other machines, the team had few options. Nari stepped up to lead and helped dig it out, even though it might take a long time, because she believed she could do it. Sophia was stunned to hear how difficult the task would be, but Nori praised herself again and reassured them not to underestimate the power of plants. She decided to plant a mass of bamboo-like plants under the relic, so their growth would lift the entire structure. To her, plant growth could break through concrete and lift the ground, and if Noria was behind it, it could push the whole surrounding area up to the surface. The plan seemed promising, so they went ahead. Nori began by spreading the roots from a slightly distant spot. Sophia wanted to be cautious and stay there for a while, so she asked them to change the day and not set up there, which was a concern. Suddenly the witch stepped forward, looked at the lightning strings, and went. She informed the protagonist that she was heading to the Sky City for a short time and asked his permission. Urgently she explained that toward the mountain with the huge coal vein, she felt a thunder spirit was watching them from where they stood. A persistent feeling told her she could not use magic there, and the protagonist let her go while wondering about the connection she might uncover. The witch planned to use Bezel's power to summon the Thunderhead and send its lightning spirits against those in the mine to find out why this thunder spirit was causing so much chaos.